It is 6 p.m. here in Cairo, time for the news bulletin, and we will be starting straight away with the main headlines. Marking Orphans' Day, First Lady Mrs. Intisar Assisi affirmed that Egypt is committed to taking good care of children and supporting them, being the most worthy of such care and support. She said that Egypt will make the day an opportunity to spread hope and bring happiness to their hearts. Orphans' Day is a national day in Egypt, celebrated on the first Friday of April. It was founded by Dar al-Urman, one of the Egyptian largest charitable organizations, since 2004. The Israeli occupation forces announced the launch of a new ground offensive in Gaza City, with rescuers saying the operations had killed at least 30 people across the Palestinian territory since dawn. The Israeli occupation said the ground troops had begun conducting operations in the Shuja area in order to expand the security zone. Israel has reasserted control over the Nitzarim security corridor that cuts off the northern third of Gaza, including Gaza City, from the rest of the Strip. Meanwhile, a single Israeli strike on the Gaza city of Khan Yunis killed at least 25 people. The health ministry in Gaza said that 1,249 people have been killed in the Palestinian territory since the Israeli occupation resumed the intense bombing on March the 18th, bringing the overall death toll since the war began to 50,609. The toll includes at least 31 people who were killed in an Israeli occupation strike on Dar al-Arqam school in the Bethha neighborhood, northeast of Gaza City. Civil Defense Agency spokesman said that 6 people were still unaccounted for in the strike on the school, which served as a shelter for the displaced Palestinians. The Palestinian Authority expressed complete rejection of a new Israeli planned security corridor across the Gaza Strip. At the Cabinet's weekly meeting, the authority said the Israeli seizure of the so-called Mura corridor that is planned to separate between Gaza cities of Rafah and Khan Yunis is contradictory to the international law, which admits Gaza as part of the state of Palestine. On Wednesday, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced Israel was establishing the new corridor to cut off the southern city of Rafah from the rest of the Palestinian territory. The United Nations High Commissioner for the Human Rights, Volker Turk, said that the death of 50 medics and humanitarian workers in Israeli fire shooting at the ambulances raises further concerns of war crimes by the Israeli army. Turk also condemned Israel for blocking the entry of the humanitarian aid for a month and resuming its military operations, saying the blockade and siege of Gaza and the suffering of civilians constitutes a form of collective punishment. He said it may also amount to the use of starvation as a method of war. An official at the Rafah land port with the Gaza Strip said that the Egyptian side of the port remained open for the 18th day running for the Palestinian patients and wounded arrivals for the treatment in Egypt. Meanwhile, the Israeli occupation authorities continued closing the port from the Palestinian side as part of the resumption of the Israeli aggression in the enclave as of the 17th of March. The Israeli occupation forces also continue blocking aid entry into Gaza since March the 2nd. The Israeli occupation forces said that its soldiers shot dead a 17-year-old boy who threw stones at the troops near the occupied West Bank village of Hussan, west of Beit Lahem. The health ministry also reported the death of 42-year-old Hussein Hardan as he was killed by the Israeli occupation gunfire in Jenin at dawn. Seven diplomats and rights workers said that 2 months after President Donald Trump announced the halt to the U.S. engagement with the United Nations Human Rights Council, Washington is influencing its work by applying pressure policy and behind the scenes. The sources added that the United States left the seat empty during a 6-week session of the 47-member council ending on Friday, but its lobbying and pressure had some success. They said that the U.S. had focused on blunting a proposal by Pakistan on the creation of an international, impartial, and independent mechanism, the most rigorous type of the UN investigation on the Israeli actions in the occupied Palestinian territories. The U.S. Senate overwhelmingly rejected a bid to block $8.8 billion in arms sales to Israel over the human rights crisis facing the Palestinians in Gaza, following the Israeli bombardment of the enclave and suspension of the humanitarian aid deliveries. The two resolutions tried to block the sales of massive bombs and other offensive military equipment. Meanwhile, a document released said the Trump administration moved forward with the sale of more than 20,000 U.S.-made assault rifles to the Israeli occupation forces last month. Secretary General of the Arab League, Ahmed Abul Ghait, said that in the current wars on the occupied Palestinian territories, Lebanon and Syria, Israel has entered a phase in which it deliberately breaches the signed agreements, acts with impunity, and kills more civilians. He warned of the consequences of the global powerlessness before the occupation's disregard for everything international law stands for. Abul Ghait added that the Israeli war machine does not seem inclined to cease its operations as long as the occupation's leaders insist on addressing the internal crises by exporting them, adding that this strategy has become evident to all. The Israeli occupation forces killed the commander of the Palestinian group Hamas in an airstrike on southern Lebanon. Hassan Farahat was killed along with his son and daughter in the strike in the Lebanese city of Saydoun. Hezbollah condemned the strike in a statement, saying that the targeting of Saydoun is evidence of the enemy's intention to expand the scope of its aggression and target all of Lebanon. Meanwhile, the Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam condemned the strike as a flagrant attack on the Lebanese sovereignty and the breach of the November ceasefire with Israel. Russia launched a barrage of drones in an overnight attack on Ukraine, killing at least 4 people and injuring 35 in the city of Kharkiv. The details follow. Russia launched a barrage of drones in an overnight attack on Ukraine, killing at least 4 people and injuring 35 in the northeastern city of Kharkiv. In the 4th such strike on the city so far this week, Russian drones hit the residential quarters, damaging several multi-story apartment blocks and causing multiple fires. Rescue teams sifted through the rubble throughout the night, searching for survivors. The Prosecutor General's office said that the prosecutors were working to identify those who were killed. It also said in a statement that 3 children were among those injured in the drone attacks. Ukrainian air defense units and mobile drone hunting groups shot down 42 of 78 Russian drones overnight across Ukraine. The military also used the electronic warfare to redirect or spoof another 22 drones. Kharkiv has been subject to nearly nightly Russian drone strikes in the past week. In previous attacks, the city's industrial companies and the infrastructure were damaged. The Ukrainian military and the regional officials said that the central Dnipropetrovsk and Kiev regions, and so the Zaporizhzhia region in the southeast, suffered damage from the drone attacks. In the city of Dnipro, 3 people were injured, and an infrastructure facility and several administrative and residential buildings were damaged in the nearby region. The governor said that 13 drones were shot down over the Dnipropetrovsk region overnight. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that the question of Iran's nuclear program should be resolved politically and diplomatically, urging restraint on all sides. Peskov said that Russia is restoring the bilateral relations with the United States, but Iran also remains its ally. This came as the U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened to bomb Iran unless it comes to an agreement with Washington over its nuclear program. Russia has offered to mediate between the two countries. In what appears to be the first significant purge of Donald Trump's second U.S. presidency, at least 6 White House National Security Council officials have been fired or reassigned. The shakeup at the NSC, which advises the U.S. president on the most important security challenges facing the country, comes at a volatile geopolitical moment, one day after the Trump administration slapped major tariffs on almost every country in the world, and as the administration struggles to negotiate an end to the conflict in Ukraine. Minister of Planning, Economic Development and International Cooperation, Rania Al-Mashot, reviewed with the executive manager for Egypt and Djibouti at the African Development Bank Group, Khalid Sharif, progress in the bank strategy with Egypt until 2026. Both sides also discussed the preparations for the upcoming annual meeting of the African Bank, due to be held next May. Minister Al-Mashot touched on the different cooperation fields, including funds intended for the water projects, as well as the other mega developmental ones. Forbes Africa magazine said that the Egyptian economy witnessed an accelerating growth rate, with the expectations that the state's gross domestic product to reach 4.7% over the period between 2025-2026, above the expectations of the International Monetary Fund that stood at 4.1%. The magazine attributed the high growth rate to the economic reforms adopted by the state and the role in attracting investments in the main industrial and infrastructure sectors. The magazine showed that the construction sector achieved a more than expected growth rate of 7.4% to become a main factor in the state's new industrial drive. On the energy sector, the magazine said that Egypt placed 6th among the largest fuel reserves in Africa. And this brings us to the end of the news bulletin for today. Thank you for watching and goodbye.